of Californians and pushes back against yet another unlawful, dangerous overreach by the president. Alongside 20 attorneys general and a governor's office, we're suing the U.S. Department of Agriculture for demanding that we turn over deeply personal data about every single applicant and recipient of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, in our state, and for threatening to withhold funding unless we comply. Let's be clear, this demand isn't about preventing waste, fraud, and abuse. SNAP has very low rates of fraud. That is well known. There are good guardrails already in place. It's about weaponizing government data to intimidate vulnerable communities. People who apply for SNAP benefits have to provide sensitive and private information about themselves and others in their households. And we promised them when they apply that their information will only be used to verify their eligibility and administer the SNAP program. Trump's USDA is demanding that states now violate that trust. The administration's taking a program meant to feed families and is turning it into a tool for fear. That's not just a broken promise, it's a betrayal. You don't promise to help someone eat, then punish them for sitting at the table. And California won't comply. Instead, we're taking Trump to court yet again. SNAP is a lifeline for over 5 million Californians. It helps working families, seniors, children, and people in crisis put food on the table. But now the Trump administration is demanding that states turn over personal, sensitive data, names, social security numbers, home addresses, even for people who applied years ago. It's a bait and switch of the worst kind. SNAP recipients provided this information to get help feeding their families, not to be entered into a government surveillance database or be used as targets in the president's inhumane immigration agenda. That's the reality here. This isn't about oversight and transparency. This is about establishing widespread surveillance under the guise of fighting fraud. We can call it what it is, an illegal data grab designed to scare people away from public assistance programs. For 60 years, states like California have run SNAP responsibly and successfully with one of the most rigorous quality control systems in the federal government. In all that time, USDA has never once asked states to turn over private and sensitive data on such a massive scale. Now, with no warning, the Trump administration is trying to change the rules in the middle of the game. They're bypassing legal procedures, ignoring privacy protections, and demanding data that federal law explicitly says can only be used for administering the SNAP program. They ignored hundreds of public comments pointing out major flaws in the government's plans. They didn't offer any credible rationale, and they're certainly not following the law. This is a clear violation of the spending clause, federal privacy statutes, and the USDA's own authority, which is why we're asking the court to block this cruel and harmful demand. President Trump made promises to the American people, and now he's breaking them. He's rewriting the rules, targeting the most vulnerable, and expecting states to fall in line, but not California. This is part of a larger pattern. Since returning to office, the Trump administration has been quietly amassing enormous amounts of personal data from federal agencies, including from the IRS and Health and Human Services. Now they're coming for SNAP data. Tomorrow, it could be housing, education, or emergency relief. It's all part of a dangerous strategy. Weaponize personal information to create fear and suppress access to essential services. This kind of targeting doesn't make America safer. It threatens kids' access to school meals. It jeopardizes wildfire survivors' access to relief, and it sends a chilling message. If you reach out for help, you may be punished for it. Not in California. We're fighting back. This isn't just about data. It's about making sure families aren't forced to choose between feeding their kids and exposing themselves to government retaliation. Today's lawsuit defends California's values, it defends the law, and it defends the basic promise that our government should protect the people it serves. Our message to the Trump administration is unwavering. You can't move the goalposts just because you don't like the rules. Rules that have been in place for decades because they work. You can't break your promises and then blame the states for following the law. And you can't use SNAP as a tool for political retribution. I want to thank the outstanding legal team that made today's action possible. They don't do it for the recognition, but I want to recognize them. Maria Buxton, Mike Osgood, Sebastian Brady, William Bellamy, Anna Rich, Robin Goldfaden, Andrew Edelstein, and Ed Wolf on my team. Thank you to a great and committed team getting us to where we are today to push back against this unlawful action by the Trump administration. Thank you. And before we take any questions, I'd like to pass it to Attorney General Letitia James.
Thank you, Attorney General Bonta. The SNAP program is a critical lifeline for tens of millions of Americans throughout our country, and specifically 2.9 New Yorkers. Every day, SNAP benefits make it possible for working families to afford to put food on the table. And more than half of those who receive SNAP are families with children, and more than a third have elderly or disabled family members. Without SNAP, many families would not be able to count on their next meal. For decades, SNAP has prevented people from going hungry and saved countless lives. But now, this administration is attempting to use this program as a tool in their cruel and chaotic targeting of immigrants. It is outrageous. It is unacceptable. And this administration has demanded that states hand over sensitive personal information of all SNAP recipients going back to 2020. That includes addresses, social security numbers, immigration statuses, and more. This is not for research or to improve a service that millions count on. No, they are basically trying to weaponize the SNAP program against immigrant communities in violation of the law. And we collectively will not stand for it. That is the administration's plans, and they have made it abundantly clear. They even removed a notice on the USDA's website that promised people could apply for and receive SNAP benefits without immigration consequences. We will not allow this life-saving program to be illegally used to hunt down immigrants and their families. No one should fear for their safety when they seek food assistance for their families. And this administration cannot intimidate vulnerable families and prevent them from putting food on the table. Today, Attorney General Bonta, Attorney General Dana Nessel, and I are co-leading a coalition of our fellow Democratic attorneys general in suing this administration to protect SNAP and the sensitive personal information of all of its recipients. The federal government's demand that states turn over SNAP recipients' data is flat out illegal. In fact, our laws prohibit us from disclosing this SNAP data unless it is strictly necessary for administering the program. And in this case, it is not. This latest action from this administration is nothing more than an attempt to sow fear and to cause chaos amongst vulnerable populations. And we are suing to uphold the rule of law, to protect the sensitive personal information of everyone who receive SNAP benefits, and ensure that this administration does not use critical and necessary food assistance to target immigrant communities. I too want to thank my team. I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank all of you. And now I turn it over to my colleague from Michigan, Attorney General Dana Nessel.
Thank you so much, AG James. I'm so proud to be here alongside both AG James and Bonta, who have been such leaders in the effort to protect our states against federal overreach from the Trump administration. And of course, to announce here yet another lawsuit to stop the Trump administration from illegally seizing the personal data of more than 1 million Michigan residents. Michigan's SNAP program provides approximately $254 million in critical food assistance every single month to vulnerable families with an average of approximately 1.4 million recipients. And that ranks Michigan 13th among all states in terms of the share of population of participating residents in the SNAP program. We need to be honest about exactly what's happening here. The federal government is demanding 5 years worth of sensitive, identifiable information on every single SNAP recipient in our state, not to improve the program, not to fight fraud, but to create a database and share information with entirely unrelated agencies, including immigration enforcement. This is unlawful. It's a violation of privacy, and it is a direct threat to health and safety of our state's most vulnerable residents. In Michigan, again, SNAP helps more than 1.4 million people every month and delivers more than $250 million in food assistance. It also helps provide nearly 400,000 children with access to school meals. These families applied for SNAP benefits to help put food on the table, not for their data to be stockpiled and weaponized against them by the Trump administration. There's such a difference between protecting program integrity and violating people's rights. And government at all levels has a responsibility to be good stewards over the private, personal identifying information we request from our residents in order to effectuate these programs. And for SNAP, that information goes way beyond what you file in your tax forms. It includes your housing information, landlord contact information, how much you pay for your utilities, even how much you pay in medical debt. When that information is shared, it is with the understanding that the federal government is only using it for its intended stated purposes. And what the Trump administration is doing here crosses that line. State agencies have repeatedly raised these concerns, asking for basic data protections for residents. Instead, we got threats to withhold federal funding unless we comply with their illegal demands. So now, of course, we're doing exactly what we have to do. We're taking this illegal action to court. We will not allow this administration to trample on the constitutional protections or unlawfully exploit the SNAP program to advance their political agenda. Our personal data is exactly that, personal. And this data should remain confidential, protected, and only used by agencies involved with SNAP recipients. Michigan families deserve this protection, and I'm going to keep on fighting until they receive exactly that. And thanks again so much, AG James and AG Bonta, for continuing to lead the fight to protect our state residents. So greatly appreciated.
Thank you, AGs Nessel and James, for your partnership and leadership. With that, we can take any questions that the press might have.
If you'd like to ask a question, you may do so now by tapping on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen. You can also submit a question through the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. First question is, which district court will this suit be filed in and when?
Thank you. Maybe I'll answer that since we're filing in California. It's the Northern District of California. We should be on file any moment or any hour now. We're in the process of filing today.
Next question comes from Marcia Kramer. You are now unmuted.
Okay, I wonder if you could tell us, Attorney General James, how many people in New York are affected by this program, how much money is in effect, and how you feel about the fact that this appears to be another attempt by the Trump administration to identify immigrants in New York, given the fact that they already just filed a suit against New York City and New York State challenging the sanctuary city status.
So I know the voice of Marcia Kramer, and you're not Marcia Kramer, but that's okay. It's 2.9 million New Yorkers that will be impacted by this policy. It's important also to note that this will have a chilling effect on vulnerable populations and particularly immigrants. And this is nothing more than a pretext to basically sow fear and chaos in communities right now that are hiding in the darkness as a result of, again, litigation that was filed against the New York City and also litigation that was filed against New York State in regards to, again, protecting immigrants and allowing them to go into court to seek orders of protection and to protect them and individuals who are witnesses to horrific crimes. This has had a chilling effect, and this is irreparable harm to all of the states that have joined onto this lawsuit. And that's why we come together as a coalition, again, defending the law, but most importantly, recognizing that our laws, our sovereign states, our individual states. We are defending states' rights, and there are laws on the books which basically indicate that we cannot disclose this information, and we have a responsibility and a duty to protect it.
Thank you, Tish.
Next question comes from Eitan. Eitan, you are now unmuted.
Thank you so much for taking the time, the Attorney General, and this one is for Attorney General Rob Bonta. Forgive me because I know you've answered this before. I know you've talked about this. I just cannot remember the exact numbers. Since the state legislature approved that special session funding of $25 million to bring legal action against the Trump administration, do you happen to know roughly how much the California Department of Justice has spent on these 35 lawsuits? And also, I know you've mentioned that you've helped secure funding or you've stopped cuts due to these lawsuits. Roughly how much stop from being cut? Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Eitan. Always appreciate your attendance, participation, and your questions. And for this one, we spent $5 million of the $25 million appropriation from the governor and the legislature during the special session to help make sure that rights and freedoms and funding for California are protected. We do expect to make an additional request for funding. It's sort of a drawdown system from the $25 million, and so we make the request, and then the funding, we hope, will get approved because it's already been pre-authorized with the $25 million. So we'll make another multiple $million-dollar request based on the hours and the work that we have put in and the money that we've spent on these lawsuits. To your question of the return on investment, I've stated before, and I'll state it again, it's one of the most incredible returns on investment in the history of California. For the cost of $5 million, we've protected about $170 billion of funding that was threatened to be withheld through restraining orders or preliminary injunctions, where we've prevented that withholding of the dollars. So that's over $1 spent for $30,000 plus dollars in return. So we're protecting and defending what California is rightfully owed in terms of funding from the federal government. As you know, California is a donor state. We provide more in federal taxes to the federal government than the federal government provides to us in programs and services. So for the people of California, for the services and programs that they're owed and that they deserve, we believe we're making, this investment is very impactful with a huge return, and that we're making great strides and inroads to protect Californians, their rights, their freedoms, and their protections. I'll also say that a number of these cases protect rights and freedoms that are constitutional rights and freedoms that are priceless. There's no amount of money that you can put on them to provide the appropriate value for birthright citizenship, for example, or the right to vote, the right from which all other rights flow. We have also secured restraining orders blocking this presidential administration from suppressing the right to vote and from stripping away birthright citizenship. So there's the dollars and cents response to your argument or to your question, but there's also a priceless argument to be made around certain rights and freedoms that are constitutional that should never be taken away and that we've protected. Thanks,
Thank
Eitan.
you so much.
Next question comes from Michael. Michael, you're now unmuted.
Hello, Attorney General. Could you please provide us the letter or the documentation that the feds sent you outlining what their process is, and if they had any kind of reaction to your initial opposition? I assume there was some kind of a initial opposition, anything that they would provide on that.
We can provide that. The complaint should have a good amount of that historical series of events leading us up to where we are today. If it doesn't, we can provide you the public documents that we have. But they have provided us, just to be clear, a date of July 30th, 2 days from now, to fully comply with this incredible, unprecedented request for data that has never before been made by the federal government. Even if we thought it was lawful to comply with, it would be virtually impossible to comply with it. So we'll share with you that information. You'll see some of it in the complaint, and we'll follow up and supplement anything that's not there. Happy to have my colleagues provide any response they might have as well.
Yeah, we will provide any information, any documentation that you require. Again, it's critically important that you understand that we are basically defending our sovereign rights, our states' rights, and all of the states that are represented here and all that are contained in the complaint each have respective laws that basically say that this information is confidential. And for us to violate that law, obviously, would be in violation of the law. And last but not least, this would have a chilling effect on so many individuals who suffer from food insecurity. And it's really all about building trust with the immigrant community and with all individuals. And so that's why it's really important that we stand together in opposition to this policy. It's also important to know that we tried to negotiate with this administration. Unfortunately, we did not get anywhere. And so that's why we had to resort to litigation.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to state your publication when you ask your question. Next question comes from Lisa. Lisa, you're now unmuted.
Yes, this is Lisa Church. I'm with MERS News in Lansing, Michigan. Thank you for taking my question. The Trump administration likes to ignore court orders. So how can you ensure that if you do win, that the information will remain protected and confidential? And secondly, I apologize if I missed this, but since your deadline is in 2 days, have you all requested an emergency PI or TRO or?
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Well, listen, can we be certain that the Trump administration is going to comply with court orders? Sadly, and unfortunately, the answer to that is no. We can never be certain. And there have been a number of times where the administration has just flagrantly violated court orders. We have several cases, certainly involving Michigan funding, where we had to file multiple motions to enforce a court order. And that was particularly true, I will tell you, with, I think it was over $100 billion in FEMA funding. And we had filed 2 motions to enforce before we finally got the money. And so that's not new to us. And it's something that obviously myself and the other Democratic AGs are going to fight back against vigorously to the extent that we're able to do that. Obviously, there's a sense of great urgency here. We don't want a situation where, for any reason, the approximately 1.4 million people in the state of Michigan who receive SNAP funding are cut off. But we also don't want to see them have their privacy rights violated. And I will say this from the very beginning, and this was as soon as Elon Musk and Doge started to invade our federal government agencies, I have been deeply concerned about what has happened in the interim with the private information that they have for our residents and for all individuals whose private information, personal information, is in the hands of the federal government, especially when they make so little in the way of promises that they're going to safeguard that information. And I will say this, in the state of Michigan, my God, the number of hurdles that our state agencies have to jump through, the vendors that we work with, the vetting that they go through, the security that they go through in terms of whatever sort of software they're using to ensure that the information that our state residents supply and provide to our state government is safeguarded and protected. The federal government doesn't seem to be doing any of those things. And it is very frightening, and it's horrific to me. And I'm deeply concerned about what's happening with that information. And not just that it's being used for immigration purposes, but God knows what else it's being used for in a way that injures our respective state residents. I'm going to let my colleagues speak to the nature of the TRO or the PI that's being sought specifically in this case.
I might add the first question first, and then I'll answer the second question as well. In our cases, the Trump administration is broadly following the court orders. There have been some times where we've had broad, sweeping court orders. We've had to dispute about what's encompassed by it, and We've gone to court to move to enforce, and we've prevailed, and then the Trump administration has complied. So in our cases, the Trump administration is following the court orders. And that's a good thing, but we're not naive. We see what some of the Trump administration leaders are saying about court orders, about so-called judges and impeaching judges, and J.D. Vance's tweet about the courts not telling the military how to run the military. And so we're very well aware, we're sober and clear-eyed about that. But in our cases, the Trump, and 4 of them where we have court orders, we don't have court orders on all those. They're broadly being followed, and we expect that here as well. With respect to the preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order, of course, as set forth in our complaint, we believe that irreparable harm is created by this action. We're not going to get too much into the legal strategy, but we will be taking all necessary steps at the appropriate time to make sure that the privacy of our constituents is protected based on this unlawful action, and also that the public health, the health, the nutrition, the food security of our constituents is protected as well.
Thank you. Next question comes from Alex Cohen. You're now unmuted.
Thank you so much. Alex Cohen from Spectrum News. This question for Attorneys General Bonta and James. On the topic of sensitive and personal information of vulnerable Americans, right now we know that the Federal Department of Justice has issued subpoenas to at least 20 clinics and hospitals providing gender-affirming care. And there was a grave concern that these hospitals and clinics will readily hand this information over to a government that considers this healthcare child abuse. What actions are your offices willing to take to protect this segment of the population? Thank you.
Let me just say that we are considering our legal options, and there's a possibility that we will be taking action further on in the week with respect to gender-affirming care. We recognize that DOGE, based executive order that was issued by this governor, we're seeking data for the purposes of engaging in immigration enforcement. We filed an action last week with respect to data that they were gathering for Medicaid recipients. Today it's SNAP, and they are also considering gender-affirming care. And again, we are considering our legal options. And so all that I can say is stay tuned.
I'll just double click on that. And hi, Alex, thank you for being here. We're tracking and following very closely with great interest and concern everything you just set forth. And please stay tuned for what we might be doing next.
Next question comes from Jesus Garcia. You're now unmuted. Okay. Next question comes from Shay Vance. You're now unmuted.
Hi, Attorneys General. This is Shay Vance with AM New York. The USDA has said that they're requesting this data so that they can prevent fraud and abuse in the distribution of SNAP benefits. Do you think there's any legitimacy to that claim? And do you have concerns that there is in fact fraud and abuse in the administration of these benefits?
That's a pretext. This is really all about immigration enforcement. This is all about advancing the agenda of the President of these United States. And that is, he has this animus against immigrants and undocumented individuals. It's clear. If you look at the executive order where DOGE is collecting this giant database, it's primarily focused on, again, in their words, not mine, illegal aliens. And so for that, any statement that they indicate, any defense that they say now that it's focused on abuse or fraud is nothing more than a pretext. This is nothing more than an attempt to gather information specifically regarding undocumented immigrants. They're asking specific information. This is unprecedented. It is historic. In the past, they have We've engaged in audits. The audits have been anonymized. We cooperate with them. We provide them with subsets of information to ensure that individuals, the grants are being complied with, and Congress has allowed states to verify information. Again, I reject this notion that this is all about abuse or corruption or whatever excuse. This is nothing more than an attempt to harass and to harangue innocent individuals who are suffering from food insecurity, and they happen to be immigrants.
A.G. James, if you don't mind me following up on that, clearly the purpose of what the Trump administration is doing here is to target immigrant communities. But I think it's important to remember it's also to send a chilling effect to American citizens and to tell them that if they apply for programs that they are perfectly entitled to under law, their most personal and sensitive data is going to be shared with all kinds of people. And it's going to have the impact, and I think it already is, of away from seeking these incredibly important programs. Man, I think we can all say there's almost nothing more important than a person's ability to eat. And yet for a lot of people who are eligible for these programs, it's frightening them because they don't know what's going to happen to their information. So they simply don't want to participate in the programs, and they desperately need that. The other thing that we're seeing, I will tell you anecdotally in Michigan, is that what's happening is where you have American citizens who are children, their parents who would normally be the ones to obviously go shopping for, grocery shopping for them or go to food pantries for them. What I'm hearing in Michigan, this might be the same for California and for New York, is these people have disappeared. They're just not showing up anymore. Now, does it mean their kids don't need food anymore? I doubt it. I think they're just going without food because they're in a state of terror. And again, it's not because these children are not 100% eligible for SNAP benefits. They are. It's just that their parents are too afraid to get food for them now. And that is so cruel on every level I can possibly imagine. I find it to be sickening.
Yeah, it's nothing more in its campaign to target individuals. It's also important that individuals understand that under the law, undocumented immigrants are ineligible for receiving federal food stamps, SNAP, except for refugees and asylees and children of undocumented immigrants. They are eligible for food stamps, but their parents are not, but their parents can apply for it. So there's certain exceptions where individuals can apply for food stamps. And it's also, I think, they've expanded, again, this animus towards immigrants, and that is under the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunities Act. They basically said that anyone who shows up at a food pantry has to show documentation that, in fact, they're eligible to receive food. This is cruel. It's intended to be cruel. And it's, again, focused on targeting innocent immigrants who simply want to eat.
Maybe I'll just add also, I wanted my thanks to the press for asking questions like this and not taking at face value the articulated reason that the Trump administration presents, because there's such a gap and a delta and a distance between what they say, their rhetoric, and what they do, their actions. Here's another example. They've called so many things waste, fraud, and abuse. It's like their go-to label, it's their default. And apparently all of the Department of Education is waste, fraud, and abuse. Most of the Health and Human Services Department, when they provide public health and public education services that are critical and essential, the opposite of waste, fraud, and abuse. If it was waste, fraud, and abuse they're looking for, you might expect it to be targeted and surgical and focused, rooting out those examples if and when they occur. But they're taking down these programs and these departments and these agencies wholesale and whole cloth. And you don't need to look any further than the articulated argument that the Trump made on the campaign trail and continues to make this to this day, and so does Stephen Miller, that they are going after undocumented criminals. United States, and they are absolutely not. On day one, they went after U.S. citizens who are born with birthright citizenship. They went after refugee programs and TPS programs, people who are lawfully present, people with legal visas, student visas, and work visas. And now they're, deporting citizen children and arresting people who are lawfully present. So there's such a distance between what they say and what they do. And I appreciate your investigation to probe and test what they say to the bottom of it, because I think what you'll see is that what they say is absolutely completely different from what they actually do. And that's another example here. This is not about waste, fraud, and abuse. This is one of the programs that have been hailed as having the best protections and safeguarding against waste, fraud, and abuse. And to somehow need every bit of data from all the states over 5 years to somehow read out waste, fraud, and abuse is, it doesn't pass the straight face test.
And if they were focused on waste, fraud, and abuse, then why would you fire so many inspector generals?
And I'm just going to add one more thing to that, right? So California and New York, our donor states, Michigan, we're about even in terms of the amount of money that we pay to the federal government and the amount of money we receive back in the form of our programming. So I just want to make it clear, again, to people who seemingly have a difficult time grasping this, not referring to our friends in the media, of course, but to other people who are watching this, that's our money. I mean, we paid tax dollars to the federal government. Then the federal government, routes that money back to us in the form of these essential programs. So we already paid for this. And so when you cut off programming like SNAP, it just goes into the pockets of Trump's friends and billionaires. But we already paid for this stuff. And our state residents, who again paid their taxes, and our individuals in our states paid their taxes, businesses paid their taxes, that money went to the federal government. We want our money back.
Okay, next question comes from Michael. Michael, you're now unmuted.
Hey, all, you can hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Last time I could not connect, which was my fault, not yours. Anyway, I am Michael Zinstein with Cal Matters. Thank you for doing this with us. Thanks for taking all of our questions. So this is sort of like a meta question. In California, we have 35 suits in 27 weeks. Not sure what the tally is with the other states on this call, but how would you put this, in what bucket of type of suit or type of either congressional or constitutional challenge would you put this suit in? Because I think with 35 suits, you have trends, buckets, right? So I didn't hear APA during the describing what the suit is. So what category would you put this in?
I'm not sure how to answer that question, but APA is part of this litigation. Okay. It is two of our causes of actions. The actions are arbitrary, they are capricious. There's also a spending clause violation. And then there is also, I believe those are the three causes of action that are mentioned in the litigation. And so I don't know, I'm not, all of these cases that we focus on, we don't categorize them. We in New York, we have filed over 30 lawsuits. They include the Medicaid data sharing, the educational grant programs, the convenience clause funding cuts, the FEMA BRIC, the ACA, the public benefits. I can go on and on and on. And there's more to come. At the end of the day, a lot of this is based on violations of the Administrative Procedure Act. A lot of this is based on violations of the spending clause. A lot of this is based on the fact that they have trespassed on the powers of the Congress. They've usurped their powers. A lot of this is just based on violations of the 10th Amendment. So just suffice it to say that most of their actions are basically unconstitutional and unfortunately disregard the fact that we have a cooperative government. There's a notion called cooperative federalism. They don't understand that. They disrespect the sovereign rights of states. They trespass on our rights each and every day. And as Democratic Attorneys General, we are standing up and pushing back against these egregious acts and, most importantly, protecting our citizens and protecting individuals from harm, individuals who simply want to eat, who need shelter, and who need housing. And we are doing it in a compassionate way, as opposed to this chaotic and cruel acts by this federal government, which has animus towards immigrants and people of color.
And quick follow-up, the funding being threatened here is administrative. How is that, help us understand administrative versus other buckets of funding that would be threatened, but in this case are not?
Well,
Maybe go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, the funding at risk here is administrative. It's the money that our states get to administer the program and oversee it and make sure we have an infrastructure that can help put the benefits out to the right people who are eligible, who are qualified. And in California, that's about $1.3 billion of funding that is being threatened to be withheld. It's different than the actual value of the benefits themselves that go out in California. It's CalFresh, traditionally called food stamps. Mostly it's loaded cards these days, not actual stamps. But that value of those actual benefits is $1 billion a month in California. That's $12 billion. So maybe one way to conceptualize it is to think about the administrative cost on the one hand, $1.3 billion in California, and the actual value of the benefits that Californians would receive, which is about $12 billion a month. So I hope that helps with your question. I did just want to add, the way I agree with everything A.G. James said about the type of lawsuit this is, the themes, the through lines with some of the other lawsuits, the consistent patterns of violation of states' rights. The way I've been looking broadly at some of our cases, or the body of our cases, is that they sort of broadly fall into two buckets. One is funding cases, where there's some attempt to withhold funding that Congress has appropriated or that otherwise should be provided to states. And another bucket, it's a smaller bucket, is around fundamental rights, constitutional rights, the birthright citizenship or the right to vote. And then within this broad attack on funding are certain smaller buckets. And this is part of sort of the DOGE bucket, where privacy is being violated to get certain data. They're trying to create a meta universal database, and to, as they describe it, take down these silos in the federal administration and put all the data in one place. Who knows what they're going to do with it? How they're going to weaponize it for immigration enforcement, for going after folks for different reasons. Maybe folks who get reproductive health care or gender affirming care. They're trying to get into that database, the Medicaid data. That was one of our other cases. And so who knows how they're going to use it, or if they sell it to private vendors for their use. But we're seeing a number of different cases recently where there's this spending clause violation, where new conditions that Congress never put on the funding are being added by the executive branch after the fact. They can't do that. The Medicaid case was like that, and this case is similar. So this is sort of in the broad bucket of funding cuts, but also in a smaller bucket within that broad bucket of sort of spending clause violations and DOGE actions trying to create this broad database.
There's also a third bucket, and that is reductions in force. And so it's also important to know that we have filed actions against any reductions in the federal workforce. Let me also go on to say that the direct funding, the grant funding, as well as the administrative funding and the reductions in force is going to have an economic proprietary impact on the states. We're going to have to try to make up the difference in the loss of federal funding. And that's what's really critically important that individuals need to understand. And in some cases, states cannot make up for the cuts in federal funding. And you're going to have a significant number of individuals who have lost their jobs as a result of these rifts, these reductions in force, seek assistance from states for food and shelter and healthcare, et cetera. So it's really critically important that individuals understand the impact to all of the states that are involved in this case and other cases.
Yeah, and if I can just add something related to my state, we're in a situation right now where we're facing a potential shutdown of the state government because of the arguments that are being had between the Republicans who are in majority in the state House and the Democrats who are in majority in the state Senate, and of course our governor. These lawsuits that I have filed with my Democratic AG colleagues, we have now saved the state of Michigan over $1.5 billion. We're probably inching closer with some of the events of last week to $1.6 billion. So at a time where there's all these arguments about road funding, how are we going to pay for road funding? How are we going to make up for the loss in federal funding for Medicaid and SNAP and LIHEAP and so many other programs that we need to find the money to help our state residents? The worst thing we could do would be to not fight this effort to defund our states by denying us these critical programs or the money that comes with these programs. And so to our state legislature who is still arguing about these financial issues, I have two words for them. You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
This question is for AG Nessel. How much funding for Michigan is being threatened to be withheld?
Well, I don't have I can get you the administrative numbers that I don't have with me right now in terms of the exact amount of money. So we're happy to provide that information. But, what we do know is the number of people that receive this every month and the amount of money that costs. And I thought that was $254 million in SNAP benefits per month. So we'll get you the information on exactly how much the administration costs are to ensure that funding makes its way to the people who are eligible.
Thanks. We have one last question that we will take. I know we're running out of time, so if you have a question that you'd like us to answer that we haven't had time for, if you put it in the Q&A feature, we will send it to each of the AG's offices to respond to. Last question comes from Ashley. Ashley, you are now unmuted.
Hi there, my name is Ashley Zavala. I'm with the KCRA3 TV in Sacramento. We're the NBC affiliate. It's sort of related to all of this with the Trump administration and states. I know Democratic states are looking and watching Texas right now in its redistricting efforts, which I know comes at the request of President Donald Trump. And I wonder just from your legal perspective and as, representing Democratic states, essentially just what you make of this possible effort from your party to try to basically do what maybe Texas is doing to counter that action. Just your thoughts there.
I know Governor Hochul, the governor of the state of New York, has indicated that they are considering looking at redrawing the maps in the state of New York. There are some legal challenges to redrawing the maps, but I believe her comment was that we have to respond in like form, that in love and war, there are no rules.
Yeah, I've not seen any activity like that in Michigan thus far. Obviously, with our divided government, it makes it, well, we have a bipartisan, commission, obviously, that does the actual redistricting, but we've already had several redrawings of the maps because our maps keep getting challenged and then we keep getting our districts redrawn. So I've not heard anything of that nature here in Michigan, and I've not heard yet of a potential response to Texas or any of the other states. But I will say this, if you can't win fairly, I guess you cheat. And that's what it seems like the state of Texas is trying to do, so that, because I think they are looking at an election in 2026 where there's no question that the Republicans are going to lose a significant number of seats in the United States House of Representatives. And I will say here in Michigan, they could lose 3 seats easily just in our state. So I think the Republicans, because they know that, they don't have a winning message, and because they can't win with their messaging, and certainly not with their deeply unpopular actions. We know the One Big Beautiful Bill is incredibly underwater. People hate it. They absolutely hate it. And I think that if we have free and fair elections in 2026, that's going to be reflected in the sea change and how many Democrats versus Republicans we have in the United States House of Representatives. And so this is just an effort by Republicans to do everything they can to somehow support their deeply unpopular policies.
It's an act of voter suppression, focusing on 5 congressional districts, which are 5 districts of color. This is nothing more than an attempt to minimize the voting rights of people of color. But as AG Nessel has mentioned, the President of the United States is underwater. His big, beautiful bill is very unpopular. And the more that individuals hear about it, the more that they know that this is nothing more than an attempt to the greatest transfer of wealth from low-income people to the rich. The fact that individuals will be cut off from food stamps, from public benefits. There will be work requirements for individuals who are working in low-wage jobs, which unfortunately do not provide health care. This is nothing more than the greatest wealth transfer ever in the history of this country. And it's unfortunate that the Republicans in Congress have basically ceded power to the President of the United States. And we are in unprecedented times. And I want to thank my colleagues, all of my Democratic attorneys general, because we have stood up consistently and repeatedly against the abuses from this president, because we believe in the rule of law, we believe in the Constitution, and we believe in protecting the rights of our citizenry.
Sure, but my main question is mainly, is it okay for Democrats to do basically what Republicans are trying to do, which is, kind of abruptly rewrite their districts for better representation? Is that okay for Democrats to do the same thing as Republicans?
Again, the Governor Hochul has indicated that she is considering it. She is reviewing it. She's talking to Leader Hakeem Jeffries. And so we will await the decision. I will await the decision of my governor of the great state of New York, along with my Congressmember Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all we have time for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Take care.
Empower your students to be more authentic, impactful writers with Grammarly's comprehensive AI writing assistance. Use it to help students